Triple H's reign of terror. It's a time not fondly remembered by longtime fans, in which Triple H, working as a heel, would show unprecedented dominance over the Raw roster for over 2.5 years. It's during this time that Triple H would develop his reputation among fans as a selfish performer, prone to politicking to keep his spot and ready to bury anyone who worked with him. Randy Orton, Goldberg, Scott Steiner, RVD, and others would all fall victim to the so-called golden shovel. This run was unusual in that the WWE has always been a territory that revolved around pushing strong babyfaces. I don't mean necessarily week to week or month to month, but as a general course of business. When you look back at the history of the WWE, the different eras are defined by their babyfaces. These were the wrestlers who were given the big matches and the most TV time. The fans invested in these stars and followed them as they chased and defended one title after another. You can compare this to a promotion like WCW, which generally used the opposite booking strategy. In that company, storylines tended to revolve around the heels, like Ric Flair and the NWO. But from the fall of 2002 until the spring of 2005, Raw was the Triple H show. Triple H's reign of terror began on September 2nd, 2002, when he was awarded the newly christened World Heavyweight Championship by Raw General Manager Eric Bischoff without any match taking place. Prior to this day, the WWE had recognized only one world title, which had been defended on Raw and SmackDown since the brand extension began in April of 2002. However, SmackDown General Manager Stephanie McMahon was able to secure an exclusive deal with Brock Lesnar, who defeated The Rock at SummerSlam 2002 to win the WWE Championship. As this left Raw without a world title, the World Heavyweight Championship was created to fill the void, and as Triple H had been previously named the #1 contender to Brock's title, he was simply awarded the new championship. At the time of this feud with Booker T, Triple H was in his second reign as World Heavyweight Champion, and had just finished an abysmal feud with Scott Steiner, which featured one of the worst matches of all time at Royal Rumble 2003. Booker T started with WCW in 1993 as one part of the tag team Harlem Heat with his real-life brother Stevie Ray. He transitioned into a single star in 1997 and worked his way up to the main event scene by 2000 when he captured his first world title. He'd remain with the company until its closing in 2001, at which time Booker would be one of the few stars to take a 50% buyout on his Time Warner contract, allowing him to join the WWE directly. Subsequently, he'd enter the WWE as the reigning WCW champion, but would be one of the early leaders of the WCW invasion, main eventing SummerSlam 2001 against The Rock. After the conclusion of the invasion angle, Booker would work with Steve Austin in a feud that would feature an unforgettable grocery store brawl. He'd then move on to a short stint with the WWE incarnation of the NWO before forming an unlikely tag team with Goldust. The group's unique chemistry and comedic antics appealed to the fans, and Booker's popularity would begin to rise. Triple H's challenger at WrestleMania 19 would be determined by the result of a battle royal on the February 24, 2003 edition of Raw. Going into this match, The Rock was the heavy favorite, and he would actually take a breather to join JR and the King on commentary at one point, hyping his all but certain title match. One by one, bodies would fly over the top rope until there were only 3 men left, at which time The Rock would go back to work, easily eliminating Christian and Kane. Booker would lay into The Rock with some chops in the corner, but would be laid out with a DDT. The Rock would begin the motions for his people's elbow, but would be distracted by the jeers of the crowd, allowing Booker the time to recover. The Irish whip would be reversed, and Booker would throw The Rock over the top rope, winning the Battle Royal and earning a shot at gold at WrestleMania. I don't think anyone was really expecting Booker to win here. He hadn't even received a televised entrance for this match. Maven got a televised entrance. The Next week's Raw would open with a controversial promo segment between Booker T and Triple H. In this infamous promo, Triple H would state that people like Booker T didn't get to be world champion, that status was reserved for men like Ric Flair himself.
See, the fact is, Booker, somebody like you doesn't get to be a world champion.
Hunter would call Booker T an entertainer in the WWE only to amuse the crowd with his dancing.
You're not here to be a competitor. You entertain people. Hell, you entertain me all the time. Go ahead, Book. Why don't you entertain? Go ahead. Do a little dance for me, Book.
And would dismiss his former WCW world title reigns entirely, referring to that company as a joke.
When Booker T was WCW champion, wasn't that around the same time frame that other illustrious superstars such as David Arquette and guys like some guy named Vince Russo was champ.
This was atypical for a wrestling promo, as Triple H was actually belittling his opponent's credibility. This kind of negativity is usually frowned upon because it's generally believed that there's nothing to be gained by making your opponent look bad. What will Triple H achieve by beating a bad wrestler? How will Triple H look if he loses to a bad wrestler? Why should fans pay to see Triple H fight a bad wrestler in the first place? This is why wrestlers usually talk up their opponents during promos. They simply disagree over who's better, and the match will settle that dispute. Still, there's no law that says you can't bury your opponent in a promo. Sometimes some storylines might even call for it. In fact, I actually agree with Hunter's point about the WCW World title. There was a time when that title was a prestigious championship, on par with, or even more important than the WWE World title. But by 2000, when Booker T entered the main event scene in WCW, their world title was nearly worthless. As Triple H mentioned, the WCW World Championship was held by the actor David Arquette and the promotion's head writer Vince Russo. It was given away, it changed hands in a tag team match, it changed hands in a straitjacket match. Booker T's first reign began at Bash the Beach 2000 after Jeff Jarrett infamously laid down for Hulk Hogan and forfeit. Vince Russo cut a promo nullifying that match and put Booker in Hogan's place. His third world title reign was won in a San Francisco 49ers match. This was a 4-corner item on a pole match. In total, the WCW title changed hands or was vacated 26 times between the start of 2000 and the company's closure in March of 2001. It changed hands 7 times in May of 2000 alone. So when Booker T claims he's a 5-time WCW World Champion, you have to put that in context. But there's one line in this promo that's particularly offensive, and its inclusion would take this angle down a very controversial path.
Your job is to make people like me laugh, and you're very good at it. With your nappy hair and your suckers.
Former longtime WWE creative team member Bruce Pritchard claims that the crux of this promo was always meant to be the supposed inferiority of former WCW wrestlers, and that no racist implication was ever intended. Likewise, during the WrestleMania 19 press conference, Triple H would deny cutting a racist promo and state that he was only referring to Booker T's criminal past. Radio personality Don Imus would lose his job about 4 years after this angle took place for making a similar comment about a female college basketball team.
That's some rough girls from Rutgers, man. They got tattoos and some hardcore hoes. That's some nappy-headed hoes there, I'm going to tell you that now.
It made nationwide headlines.
I don't think MSNBC should be carrying the kinds of hateful remarks that Imus uttered the other day.
With your nappy hair and your suckers.
Judging by the drone of the crowd, I think it's safe to say that most people interpreted this as a racist statement. Booker T would offer a retort on the next episode of Raw, cutting a promo discussing his difficult upbringing and his criminal past. Booker was actually convicted in 1987 of 2 aggravated robbery charges after holding up multiple Wendy's fast food restaurants. He and his accomplices actually wore Wendy's employee uniforms during the holdups, as they'd worked for the company for 2.5 years. This of course led police to suspect an inside job, and Booker was quickly arrested. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison, but was released on parole after only 19 months. Ric Flair would interrupt, saying that Booker wasn't Michael Jordan or Tiger Woods, and that he damn sure wasn't Triple H. Flair would then take a dig at Booker's past and deliver an offer from Triple H for Booker to carry his bags and serve as his chauffeur, as that was all Booker was apparently qualified to do. An enraged Booker T would lay Flair out, then hit the backstage area in search of Hunter. He'd find him wetting his hair in his private bathroom. Triple H would nonchalantly hand Booker $1 and tell him to go fetch a towel. This would of course result in a beatdown, and Hunter would take his frustrations out on recent Tough Enough winner Maven later in the night. The next week, Triple H would cut a promo stating that Booker T was a common street thug who'd blindsided him and was undeserving of a title shot. Goldust would interrupt, stating that he knew deep down
of your heart
that Triple H was worried, and at WrestleMania, he'd find out that you couldn't judge a book by its cover. A brawl would ensue, and Booker would run in to make the save, causing Hunter and Flair to retreat. Backstage, Triple H would trash the locker room and demand a match with Goldust that night. Booker would accompany Goldust to the ring, but wouldn't get involved until Goldust was thrown to the outside, where Flair would take some cheap shots while Hunter distracted the ref. Booker would take out Flair, but would be attacked with a crutch by a crazed fan in the front row, who would be revealed to be Randy Orton. Strangely, the crowd didn't seem to have much reaction to this revelation, and it's possible they couldn't tell it was Orton being ejected from the arena. Back in the ring, Goldust would attempt to shatter dreams, but would double over in pain, unable to complete the move. Triple H would capitalize with a high knee and then a pedigree for the 3 count. Booker T and Goldust would lay defeated in the ring. The Go Home Raw for WrestleMania would feature a tag team match with Triple H and Ric Flair versus Booker T and Goldust. Booker and Triple H would square off multiple times in this match, and it would get pretty heated. Hunter would even do a blade job following a shot against the steel steps at ringside. Ultimately, Booker would reverse a pedigree attempt into a slingshot to the turnbuckle, and follow it up with a scissor kick to score a clean pinfall victory over the reigning world champion. Booker and Goldust would celebrate their win, while Triple H lay bloody and dazed. Later, backstage, Ric Flair would give a pep talk to a defeated-looking Triple H. Ric Flair would tell Hunter that he was the man and to never forget that. Triple H would simply reply,
"Obviously, nobody told Booker T that."
Then slowly limp away. Triple H vs. Booker T for the World Heavyweight Championship would be the 6th match on the card at WrestleMania 19. Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler would bicker on commentary, with the King calling Booker a street thug who had Johnny Cochran on speed dial. Jim Ross would put over Booker T for overcoming a difficult childhood. Triple H and Booker T would come face to face for the referee's instructions. Booker would threaten Hunter, who would say nothing. The match would open with a lockup, which the referee would be forced to break after both men disregarded the 5 count before returning to the ring. Hunter would briefly take the upper hand with a shoulder tackle before eating a clothesline, which would result in a 2 count. Triple H the shot to the ring post of his own, then follow it up with an elbow on the apron. A beatdown would follow, with Triple H executing a neck breaker for a 2 count. Booker would fire back with some chops, but would catch a spine buster for another 2 count. Then follow it up with a spin kick, a side slam, and a flying crossbody for another 2 count, which Booker would escape in the corner. However, Hunter would hit a flying knee, and another pin attempt would follow. Hunter would dodge the scissor kick and send Booker back outside. Hunter would catch Booker with a stiff right hand, then attempt a superplex, which Booker would block and fight his way out of. More interference from Flair. Then Booker would perform a WCW-era finisher of his own, executing the Harlem Hangover from the top rope. Both competitors would slowly rise to their feet, where Hunter would hit the pedigree. The match at WrestleMania itself would receive a mixed to positive critical reception. Internet wrestling reviewer Scott Keith would grant the match 2.5 stars, criticizing the lack of crowd reaction and the weak finish. However, this feud has been almost universally panned online, and in some cases outright condemned. The WWE and wrestling in general are no strangers to racist storylines. These have ranged from absurd and sort of ridiculous to extremely offensive. I've always thought that wrestling was too one-dimensional and carny to provide serious social commentary. For instance, Triple H was filmed having sex with a corpse just months prior to this storyline. But as Jim Cornette says, personal issues draw money. There have been many critically acclaimed films that deal with racist themes, so I don't think that there's necessarily anything wrong with WWE featuring a storyline that revolves around racism. It's a very sensitive topic, and one that's sure to elicit a strong reaction. What I think went wrong with this feud, the wrong guy won. When you look at this feud week by week, the build is actually pretty solid. Week 1, Triple H buries Booker T, personally insulting his character, his past, and his accomplishments using racist language. Week 2, Booker T strikes back, laying out Ric Flair and Triple H in separate segments. Week 3, Triple H gets his heat back with a win over Booker's partner, Goldust. Week 4, Booker T beats Triple H clean in the ring, causing Triple H to doubt himself. Considering this feud was hastily put together, that these two didn't have much of a backstory to work with, the WWE did a pretty good job of making Booker T look like a strong contender. Triple H couldn't have put him over any better than on the go-home edition of Raw. So the story leading up to WrestleMania is Booker T, the babyface underdog who has overcome adversity and walked away from a life of crime, versus Triple H, the blue blood, arrogant, racist snob who dismisses Booker's entire class as beneath him. This storyline only works if the babyface wins. To have the heel go over in this situation indirectly validates all the statements Triple H made in his first promo segment, and that's why this feud is so infamous. The WWE ran a racist angle, then unbelievably let the racist character win. Imagine if Django Unchained had ended with Calvin Candy enjoying white cake in his study, while Django toiled away at the LeQuint Dickey Mining Company. How depressing would that be? Who would want to watch that movie? And this wasn't just another show, this was WrestleMania. What happens at WrestleMania matters. Those are the moments that fans remember forever. And according to Bruce Pritchard, that was the issue here. Vince McMahon was insistent that Brock Lesnar's victory over Kurt Angle in the main event should be the defining moment of the show, and wanted nothing to take place that could steal that spotlight. The other two being Stone Cold Steve Austin at WrestleMania 17 and Triple H himself at WrestleMania 2000. According to Pritchard, the World Heavyweight title was given the back seat, with Angle vs. Lesnar, Hogan vs. McMahon, and Austin vs. Rock. The finish of this match also didn't help matters. I think it's done far too often, and in most cases, a finisher should just end the match. The time he went for the cover, 23 seconds. It takes less time for Chris Benoit to make a cup of coffee. While I'm sure that Triple H would defend this delay, claiming this extended time between the finisher and the pin accomplished nothing but putting over the pedigree and making Booker look weak. The fallout of this feud would drag on for another month. The Raw after WrestleMania, Booker would face off against Chris Jericho. The match would be interrupted by Ric Flair. Booker would receive a beatdown at the hands of Jericho, Flair, and Triple H. Shawn Michaels would run in to make the save, but would be quickly overpowered, and the segment would end with Shawn locked in the walls of Jericho and Booker in the Indian Deathlock. The April 7, 2003 episode of Raw would see Booker T and Shawn Michaels take on Triple H and Chris Jericho in a tag match, which would end in a pinfall victory for Booker and Shawn. A brawl would ensue after the match, and a bloody Shawn Michaels would be saved by the returning Kevin Nash, who would go on to appeal to his best buddies to try and get along. On the April 14th episode of Raw, Booker would publicly request a WrestleMania rematch from General Manager Eric Bischoff, who would ultimately determine that Booker would get his rematch only if he and the Hurricane were able to defeat Triple H and Ric Flair in a tag match that night. This didn't make a ton of sense, as Booker had already pinned Triple H clean in a tag match just 1 week before. Why did he need to do it again? The tag match would close the show, with the Hurricane and Booker picking up the victory thanks to assistance from Shawn Michaels. The heels would corner Michaels, but Kevin Nash would make his way to ringside once again, stopping the assault. In the confusion, Nash would strike Booker, who would then retaliate against Michaels, although this would be played off as a misunderstanding. The next week, Shawn Michaels would be named the special guest referee for the Triple H Booker T rematch. Despite his brief confrontation with Booker the previous week, Shawn would promise to call the match straight down the middle. By the way, has anyone served as special guest referee more than Shawn Michaels? It's practically a part-time job for him. Although Booker would escape the pedigree and connect with the scissor kick twice, this match would ultimately be ruled a no contest due to repeated interference from Chris Jericho and Ric Flair. Kevin Nash would make his weekly trip to the ring to save Shawn Michaels, but will be attacked by Triple H, officially beginning their feud. 2003's Backlash would feature a six-man tag with Triple H, Ric Flair, and Chris Jericho taking on the team of Booker T, Kevin Nash, and Shawn Michaels. The match would conclude with Triple H striking Nash with a sledgehammer to secure a victory for the heels. And these two would face off in singles matches at the next two pay-per-views. Booker would exit the main event scene following this match, but would move into a feud with Christian for the Intercontinental title. He'd remain in the mid-card for the next 3 years, before winning the 2006 King of the Ring tournament. Shortly thereafter, he would defeat Rey Mysterio at the Great American Bash to earn his first WWE World title. Triple H would continue to dominate the Raw brand until 2005, when he'd be defeated by Batista at WrestleMania 21, once and for all ending the so-called Reign of Terror. Despite the controversy, If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you disliked it, give it a thumbs down. Leave any comments below, and don't forget to subscribe.